Hey everybody, Beastman here with another quick tutorial from the depths. This time I'm going to be covering propulsion and the centre of mass and what that does for your ships. I have increased the volume this time as per request of the last time, so we'll see how that goes and let me know. So this ship here is the Vuga by Annihilation. It's a Helios design for the Longfall tribes. I'm just going to use this because it's nice and skinny and it lets us see quite easy how things are happening. So as you can see, this is the center of mass here. This is basically the line where your weight is centered in your boat. So heavier something is at the bottom, it'll pull that down. More that's on the top, it'll pull that up. If this is too high, your boat will flip over and turn upside down, as is shown in the buoyancy one. And also in faster designs, starting up the speed will push the centre of mass back, which if you've got props that are set to reverse or whatever, it will suddenly have an adverse effect on those, so it's worth bearing in mind. But for now, so centre of mass is kind of roughly there. If we follow this back, we'll see that the propellers are actually lower than the centre of mass. Now, a lot of boats have this done on purpose because, as we can see here, it pushes the front up out the water, makes it what's called hydrodynamic. So the less front that's in the water, the less drag you've got, the faster it will go. You'll notice when the front's out the water, the speed will go up slightly. When it hits a wave or it drops down, it'll slow down again. That's drag. So this hydrodynamic is the word. Basically, again, if we look at the drag, the green bits are good drag, red bits are bad drag. It's forward facing only, so it's only the front facing parts that are affected by the drag. So what would happen if I changed where the props are and I put it more in line with the centre of mass? What's going on here at Necrace? Spin blocks. Cheating. Alright, so let's just do this. I'll slow it down a little. So centre mass. Okay. Up a little bit more. So these are now positioned in line with the centre of mass. The boat will take a flatter trajectory, and you'll notice that, I mean, it should on average, it should have a more steady speed because it's always going to be at the same level. But as you can see, it's not going as fast as when the props were a little bit lower, and that is just because there is more of the boat in the water, and also I think I probably added a tiny bit of drag at the back with adding those little bits that are sticking out at the back. But now what would happen if I placed them even higher than that? Well, in this case I think there probably wouldn't be enough contact with the water to make it go any sort of speed at all. And I think we're going to crash into this island in a second, so let's do this quick. So this is now higher than the centre of mass. Should push the front of the boat down into the water a bit more. We'll slow it down a little bit. Yeah, there we go. So as you can see, it's important where you position your props in relation to your centre of mass. You can manipulate where this is by shifting weight around. You've got to watch things like turrets. Turrets, if you've got big gun houses, they when they turn, if you've got a lot of armor in, then it will move that weight to the side. Your center of mass might then move to the side, which if you're then turning with a rudder, it might dip into the water. Tell you what, I'll show you that. So if I have a bunch of heavy armor going off to one side, we can see now that the center of mass is off to the left. The boat is tipping as a result. Let's see if I can get it to at least balance. Tiny bit. Okay, so as you can see, you've got to really watch the center of mass. It is massively important on your ship. Let's see if I drop that back in, if it'll sort itself out. Maybe the weight's a bit too much of a heavy armor block. Okay, so that's sort of holding its own. But if we start going forward now, okay, this must be AI controlled fine. As you can see, we start turning because there's too much weight on this left hand side. Oh no, starting to totally bank. Your guns are trying to aim at this boat, it's over there somewhere, and the turrets can't because they can't. So you've got to really watch the center of mass. Likewise, if the turrets had turned right to face that boat, it might have dipped the other way, it might dip into the water. You've got to watch recoil. If you fire the guns, the boat will tip to the side. So how do we counter turrets turning? This one's maybe got some. Okay, so this is completely ugly, but so we use what's called roll props. Now, generally, you don't need these if you design the boat right or well, but the smaller a build is, the harder it is to get right. Wider it is, easier it is to balance. So as we can see here, the props are turning to try and achieve desired, well, 0 roll. So we'd look at this, we'd say set the roll prop to be left hand side, set the right prop to be roll reverse right hand side. You can change the strength there, how hard. It's usually better to just let the PID or whatever manage that. This also has pitch ones. So front ones are thruster. Anything behind the center of mass is thruster reverse, and this is really important. People get this wrong so often, and I mean I do as well. If you forget sometimes, or if your center of mass is changed, especially when you're closer to here and you're doing like a thruster craft or something, hovercraft, and it goes all wrong. It's the same for if the thruster was down facing up here. It's behind the center of mass, it's thruster reverse, and that the AI knows at that point how to use it properly. Anything in front of the center of mass is forward. It's just a normal thruster. It's the same with side props. If you're using side props, front ones thruster, rear ones thruster reverse. And if you stick to that rule, you should be okay. There are instances where you might change it, but for a simple build, that's all you need. To manage roll, there will be one here somewhere, but I'm just going to place one anyway. You want a PID, set the condition to roll, and then you could leave it at this. You don't need to play around with it too much. Again, I'll cover PIDs more in a future one, but that will then get the boat. The boat will try its hardest using the props that's available to manage the roll. So that's boat. What about planes? So, okay, plane. Okay, so you can see here, excuse me, I've got a cough. So again, center of mass is here. The prop, which is providing the force, which is going that way, that is, well, mostly in line with the center of mass. Center of lift comes from wherever your wing parts are. So if I placed a wing part at the front here, like a lift, just a normal wing, that would bring this forward. If I put it back here, then it would draw it back. What you've got to watch with lift is that if the lift is behind your center of mass, it's going to pull the plane up. If the lift is in front of your start that again. If the lift is in front of your center of mass, it's going to lift the plane up. If it's behind your center of mass, it's going to probably take the front down. It kind of depends on your weight distribution. But as we can see here, as the speed increases, the center of mass fluctuates and gets closer to that center of lift. The control surfaces that are the ailerons, which are hidden underneath these mimics here. Ailerons, as you can see there. Ailerons control left and right. Tail planes and yaw rudders control the turning and the pitch. Ailerons are there to control roll more than anything, like that. And using this view, I can see what the AI is trying to do at any given moment. If your plane isn't doing as you'd expect it to do, that is because you probably don't have enough control surfaces for it to do what it's trying to do. It's a common thing. I mean, people will say, oh, you need a thruster here and a thruster there. You don't. You can make a plane absolutely fine using no thrusters. This only uses these. It's actually two sets of spinners that are clipped through each other using light blocks, but just to provide double the thrust to get it going a bit faster. But if I was to put a thruster at the back here, it would be fine using ailerons and so forth. Once you actually start adding thrusters and nose thrusters and things, it actually does start to confuse if you're trying to use an aerial PID, or it actually starts to confuse it because it doesn't properly know how to use those. So you're actually better sticking to general PIDs if you're using planes. If you're using only wing parts and no thrusters, then you're using aerial altitude PIDs is a good idea. When I say PIDs, there's these ones that are in the AI tab, and they are hardwired into your AI. They need a link to your AI somewhere, and they sort of hook into the bit more symbiotic with the AI cards. But I know this is probably going to change in a patch shortly. But at the moment, I'm just gonna, because it is how it is, I'm just gonna say I could put this a general PID, which is in the control tab over here. You can set that to be anywhere, and it's these things. I mean, usually you're using roll and pitch. Occasionally altitude if you're making a hovercraft. The other ones you don't really need, unless you're making submarines and things like that. But again, if I was to put let's delete one of these. So we can see that the tailplane's having to work pretty hard to as much as I thought it would. Let's go back. From the depths always surprises you. So as you can see, this is now lower than the center of mass. Planes have to try really hard to try and keep this now. The nose is this. You can see the force now on this tail plane trying to keep this under control. So again, much better. Keep your center of mass up there. Keep it in line with your center of mass, and then it's much more balanced. Probably not enough. There we go. But again, if I was to put it up above the center of mass, I mean, this is really obvious probably to a lot of people, but it's going to push the nose down, and eventually that's going to go into the water. Again, very more common than you'd think, seeing people do this, but quite often if you just Google from the depth, plane pitching up, going into space, blah blah blah, these are the reasons why people don't have enough control surfaces, they don't have enough thrust to keep this lift going on the wing part. It's not as much an issue as it used to be. Wings got boosted. So as you see there in the description, lift force per speed is 0.8. So you actually have to be going up fast for lift to take place with your wing parts. You don't need a lot of wing parts now compared to what you used to need. So I think in this I've got a few bits there. Got a few bits there. I mean, nowhere near as many as you used to need to get lift going. But again, thing that you see, this is using roll turning. Most of the things in Neater don't use roll turning. They use yaw turning. So if you look at the AI, the angle deviation before you turn is basically how much you'll let something get out of the front of the plane's view before it starts trying to turn, and that's just a normal yaw. And then afterwards, this is where it will actually start to use ailerons and things to start rolling to turn. So if you don't want this to roll at all and you just want it to yaw, set that to 180 and set your most extreme roll angle to either be 0 or something stupidly high. So if I did this, the plane will now only try and yaw to turn, it won't roll. So bear that in mind if you're picking apart Neater designs to try and work out how they work, because most of them just turn on the one axis, they don't bank and then use up force to turn. Maybe kind of straight off topic a little bit here, but a lot of these things in FTD, they will sort of merge into each other. One thing leads to another thing, which leads to another thing. I hope that's been clear-ish. If you've got any questions, just ask. Again, if you want me to cover something specific, just say. And that will do for now, and I'll catch you next time. Thanks.